Men, we are living in troubling times. The world feels like a pressure cooker that's getting ready to explode. And I personally believe that most of the blame can be laid at the feet of weak and passive men. But I also believe that the solution to most of the world's problems is strong, assertive men. The world needs men, because when a man gets it, everyone wins. Join us today as we explore the kind of man the world needs. Well, hey guys, thanks again, Men in the Arena Army, for making this podcast Spotify's #1 podcast for Christian men. I'm excited about today's interview. I think you're going to love this guy. If he's half as entertaining as his amazing book, you are going to really have the time of your life, guys. This is Brant Hansen. He lives in South Florida with his beautiful wife, Carolyn, of 33 years. Brant is a best-selling author, nationally syndicated radio show host, and he also is the host of the podcast, The Brant and Sherry Oddcast. That should give you a little clue today, guys. With more than 15 million downloads. He's a passionate advocate for the work of Cure International Children's Hospitals. They're dedicated to healing the sick and proclaiming the kingdom of God. Among Brant's books are Unoffendable and The Men We Need, which is our topic for today. I'm excited to bring our new friend on, Brant Hansen. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm honored to be on. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited. Like I said, your book was so entertaining, and I read a lot of books, and this was definitely not a skimmer for me. And you said some things in the book I resonated with, and I just think that we live in a time where we desperately need the males to become men, and we need the men to step up. And so why did you write the book, Brant?
Well, okay, so I love what you just said about we need guys to be men and we need them to step up. A lot of times, I don't know if guys know what that means, though.
Yeah.
So I think that's what kind of triggered it. It might, like, so I need to man up. All right, so okay, does that mean I buy a truck? Does that mean, I get a gun rack? Does that mean, what does that mean? And so my producer is a brilliant woman. She's a single woman, and she was raised by football players and factory workers and whatnot in Pittsburgh, where she's from. And so and hunters, like they're all manly guys.
Yeah.
But she was like blown away. She came to work with me, and she's like, "You play the flute
and the accordion.
You have puppets to use on the radio. Like none of this makes any sense. It was such a strange creature, but." She actually encouraged me to write the book. She actually wrote the foreword for it. And what she would say, and I think this is really kind, she said she could see how my wife and daughter in particular felt extremely secure around me.
Yeah.
And it was really striking to be in our home, the peace. And she's like, so that's the masculinity thing. And so she encouraged me to write a book about that, to say, because a lot of guys, they're not into hunting or they're not into guy stuff. They're not good. Like I tried to play football, man. That literally, I said this in the book, is true.
Yeah.
I went out my senior year. I was tiny, but I grew up to 5'10" all of a sudden when I was a senior. And I went out for football, and they didn't have a helmet big enough to fit my head.
I looked at your picture, and I'm like, his head does not look that big, but you must have grown into your head.
It was a very small town, and I have grown into my head. Thank you very much. But it's like, it's really funny. Like, so I'm not good at that stuff, but there's a lot of guys, like they're lawyers or they're actuaries or they're accountants or they're gamers. They're not outdoorsy. Well, so where does that leave them when it's to man up? What does it mean? Like, what are we saying? So that's what the book is about. I try to offer actually a definition of masculinity that any guy could go, okay, that's me. It's not about me climbing a mountain barehanded or hunting elk.
Yeah.
All those things are awesome. Don't get me wrong. But it's like, if that's the essence of masculinity, I think we're missing out on really what the world needs from us. So that's the idea.
But you were on the state librarian team. What was that you said in the book?
Oh, no, you're wrong, sir. I have to correct you. I was the president of the Illinois Student Librarians Association.
Oh, that's right.
That's the entire state. I was the president of the librarians. So that kind of, yeah.
Hail to
I don't
the
want to brag
chief.
about it.
Hail to the chief,
Yeah.
baby. Well, it's really funny. Your
Thanks.
book was really refreshing because clearly with my background, I played college football. I do love to hunt. And so people will oftentimes say to me, well, is that masculine? I drive a truck, and people will say to me, is that masculinity? And I say this, a man is as a man does. Some of the most pathetic males on the planet are guys that enjoy the same things I enjoy. And some of the most manly men that I've ever met, my board chairman is one of the most manly men I ever met. He's totally different than me, and he's more like you. And he's just a phenomenal human being. And a man is as a man does. And so when I read your book, it's really a beautiful compliment to my book, Strong Men, Dangerous Times, because we're saying the same things, but you and I, we would probably enjoy the same cup of coffee in a coffee shop, but we probably would stop there, right?
Yeah, I think you would take time out to stuff me in a locker somewhere.
No.
Just based on my high school experience, but I know, I'm just kidding.
Well, I gotta tell you a story about that. I had a guy, Tim. I'll just leave his last name off. I had a guy named Tim sent me an email about a Facebook message about 5 years ago. So I'm a 50-year-old man at the time. He said, hey, Jim, I don't know if you remember me, but I just wanted to thank you because when we were in 7th grade, the 8th graders were putting me into a locker and duct taping my butt cheeks, and you jumped in and stopped them. And that was me. I hated bullies because I had a smaller brother and sister. So I was the anti-stereotype. But I hate that stereotype because it is true in a lot of cases, sadly.
Yeah, well, I just had to make that joke, and I appreciate that too. Because honestly, so this is the thing. I get people's attention pretty fast when I talk about this in person, especially the younger guys. But I'll talk to women and guys at the same time and do a little experiment. I noted this in the book. I will show them a bunch of pictures that I've gotten off Google that are just random news story pictures of real guys doing stuff. And it's guys like there's one literally pulling like a goat out of a flood. Strangely, like there's another one where there's like a soldier, it looks like he's maybe Indian in India, pulling somebody out of a village that's on fire. Or there's people getting a baby out of a overturned car in a ravine. And I just fire through all these real photos of real guys. None of them are models. None of them, there's nothing remarkable, like typical guys, some of them a little overweight, some of them, all different nationalities, all that stuff, different ages. I fire through these and I'm like, hey, I have a question for the ladies. Are those guys attractive? And there's a visceral, immediate reaction of yes.
Yep.
And I go back through the photos slowly. I'm like, guys, wait, let's go back through this. I can't see, look, none of them are models. I can't see their six packs. They're not jacked. They're losing their hair. They're whatever. And why did you sense this reaction from women? So to your point, when we associate masculinity with having a big truck or hunting or whatever, that's awesome. But let's say I am totally jacked. Let's say I'm I don't know. I'm trying to think of somebody. Chris, what's his name? Hemsworth or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we guys think, okay, being jacked on that level is obviously highly attractive to women. It is sort of at first for some women, but let's say you work out all the time and you're ripped like that. If you actually don't make your wife feel secure, you'll actually resent your muscles. You'll actually find them unattractive. Mm-hmm. Conversely, if you're somebody who is a defender of the vulnerable, and you're somebody who makes people feel secure because you're around, because you're willing to act, because you're willing to stand up like you did for the kid in 7th grade, when you're willing to do that kind of stuff, you don't have to be ripped. You can have an imperfect body. You don't have to be 6'4". None of this. And women will find you attractive. Your wife will find you attractive. You make her feel more secure. And I give this example in the book, and I say, I'm not telling you this so that you can go, well, here's how I'm going to be attracted to women. I'm telling you this because women intuitively understand what we're supposed to be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They know deep down what we're supposed to be. So when we say man up, when we say we need to be men, like I go back to the job that was given to Adam in the garden, specifically to Adam. Mm-hmm. He's supposed to be the keeper of the garden. That's his role. And there's a lot to that. It's not just defending the space, but that is part of it. I mean, he's the guard, he's the security guard, but he's also supposed to cultivate, help these things that are in a garden that normally wouldn't be able to survive in the wild. But because you're doing a good job as a keeper of the garden, these things can bloom and flourish. Like, those are the vulnerable people in my life. I am here to make sure that people get to flourish and bloom. So that to me is the essence of masculinity. And when you inhabit that, it just so happens that your wife will find you extremely attractive when you have that sort of character. They respond to it.
Yeah, I'm convinced, like, once you get beyond the teen years and early, 20s, women, I don't think, care about what a man looks like. They care about how a man acts. And I thought it was really cool in your book because you said men are the keeper of the garden. You go back and forth through the book. And that Hebrew word is the word shamar. And in your book, you said that word means to guard, to protect, and to watch over. And that's what men do. And I love what you wrote on page 18. You said, we are at our best when we champion the weak and vulnerable. We are at our best when we use whatever strength we have to safeguard the innocent and provide a place for people to thrive. And man, I just applaud that. I think that was beautifully put.
Thanks. This is it, right? Like if I'm a threat to my wife, that's betraying masculinity.
Yes, absolutely.
So we call that toxic masculinity, and we should. I mean, if you're a domineering threat to the vulnerable or for people around you, your wife or your sister or your mom, like if you're a threat, that is toxic. But another thing I unpack though that our mutual friend Paul Friesen talks about a lot. Like he's a counselor with his wife.
Yeah.
But they run into another kind of toxic, which is toxic passivity.
Yes.
So a lot of guys check out, which still breeds insecurity just from another angle, where your wife or the people in your household don't know if you'll actually step up to do what needs done. So that can send a wife into insecurity, thinking that she's got to exert all this energy to do everything because you're not showing up, because you've checked out. For a lot of us, look, I love video games. For a lot of guys, though, if you're sitting there playing 5 hours a day of video games, your wife may be insecure because of your passivity. So that's another kind of toxic. In either case, you're not breeding security. If you breed security of people around you, you're nailing it. Like people should feel more secure because you're around.
I'm a big fan of, I think toxic masculinity actually is an oxymoron by definition, but it's toxic maleness. It's this toxic passivity. In fact, in your book on page 39, you said this: a passive man, I think this is so powerful, becomes useless to those around him. What's more, you continue, this may seem counterintuitive, a passive man is a threat to the women in his life. And so our woman, to the woman. Well, women, because if he has daughters-in-law. So I just think that's very powerful. And you talk about in your book, the body of your book is 6 decisions that a man needs to make that will make him the kind of man this world needs. And how did you come up with 6? Did you go back between 7 and 8, or was it just boom, they are?
I was like, Jordan Peterson has 12. If I could sell half his books, that'd be pretty cool. So I went with half.
And there's no lobster story in there though. So
no, that's true. It's true. So no, it's just stuff that jumped out at me that I noticed over and over and over and over and over. Like that if we made these decisions and put them to use in our lives, that we would be radically different than the normal guy. But it's beautiful stuff. But again, it's stuff that's accessible for any guy. You don't have to be an athlete or not. You can be, but it's like, this is anybody in any station of life can do these things. That's what I wanted.
Well, it's really fun. When I read books, I like to do 2 things. Well, 3 things. I like to enjoy the book. I like to look for typos, and I like to look for words I've never heard before, right? And so in your book, I don't remember finding any typos, so I applaud that. But I found a couple words I'd never heard of before. So can you explain this word? Hikikomori?
Hikikomori, yeah.
Hikikomori, there it is. Word. Is that some Japanese sword fighter or something?
It's not nearly as cool. It's the opposite of cool. It's guys It's guys in Japan who are shut-ins, young guys who don't leave their apartments or don't leave their parents' homes. They just rely on their computer,
Mm.
and mom brings them food. They don't get jobs. And there's a huge number of them, hundreds and hundreds of thousands just in Japan. But it's been written about as a phenomenon, but they just have their video games and their porn. No real friends, nobody offline. They don't leave. And
Wow.
so the hikikomori phenomenon, I think, is it's growing into Western countries too. But there's a lot of guys that are just I'm trying to encourage younger guys, like, look, is there's anything wrong with that? Because if you ask somebody, let's say Bob is home, young Bob, he's 23, he never leaves his house, he just plays video games, let's say, and he's happy. We'll say he's happy. Of course, he's not going to be, but let's say
Yeah.
he is. He never leaves his house. Is that okay? And a lot of people will say, well, as long as he's not hurting anybody.
As long as he's happy.
But right, and I'm trying to tell guys, that's a lie.
Yeah.
He is hurting people. He is hurting people because we needed him to show up.
Yep.
We actually, you have a unique set of skills, and I sound like Liam Neeson. You have a unique set of skills, like and talents that God has given you, and you are put in a context. We need you to actually use that to be a keeper of the garden. There are actual real women, for instance, that would like you to grow up so that you'd be an awesome husband and father, as an idea. Like, but there's all sorts of things. We're suffering for the lack of men being keepers of the garden. The fact that you're not showing up, you are hurting people. The idea that as long as I don't hurt somebody, it's okay is a myth. That's not how we work. So the fact that you didn't show up, man, we needed you.
I agree. Well, you reminded me of John chapter 4. The Bible records that Jesus had journeyed. He was at the well. His disciples went in to find food because they were hungry, and Jesus was resting by the well because it was the heat of a day, and this Samaritan woman showed up. He asked her for a drink. So what we know just from those first 8 verses of Mark is that Jesus was hungry, tired, and thirsty. But what Jesus did that was so impressive is he showed up. He showed up, and 85% of it is showing up. And so I think, well, this kind of leads into our first decision. So you call men to 6 decisions to make them the kind of man that our world needs to transition beyond a passive male into an assertive man. And decision 1 is, and I thought, I never would have thought of this. I've labeled it different things, but this was so powerful as I unpacked it. And I'm going to ask you to unpack it. To forsake the fake and relish the real. You want to unpack that for us?
Yeah, well, this is a huge problem.
Yeah.
My goal in talking about this wasn't a guilt trip, because number one, it doesn't help, the guilt thing. People need a bigger vision for their lives to be able to say no to something. So the other thing is, I feel sorry for us. I don't want to whine about it, but like, men have never been subjected to what we're subjected to before.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. Agreed.
This is the weirdest thing. And I wish it weren't so. And I'm talking about pornography, for instance, or, the advent of sex robots and stuff like that are selling like mad. And
I'd never heard of that before your book. I'd never heard of a sex robot.
really?
No, I never heard of it.
Okay.
I believe you.
No, it's a huge thing.
Wow.
And it's taking off like crazy. And they're even programming the robots to interact with you and ask you how your day is going and to give you encouragement about your work using AI talking. So the way sin works, I'm trying to tell guys too, sin isn't a random list of words or just actions that God just doesn't like for some reason. It's stuff that keeps us from living a life of peace and wholeness. It's stuff that leaves us with death.
Yeah.
And with pixels on a screen or with a robot, a piece of plastic, you're just left with yourself. And nobody wants, like, in the end, asking a big picture question, like, is that who you want to be?
Yeah.
Because it always looks good. It always seems like the real thing. That's the way sin always works. It's a replacement,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a sucker punch because it feels like the real thing. It's got the excitement of a real thing. It's got the dopamine hit of a real thing, and then you're left by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's how this always works. The same thing with video games, and I love video games. Okay, so I'm not going off on. I'm not saying never play a video game, but I actually think they're so fun. That's part of the problem. Even if it's a completely clean video game,
Mm-hmm.
like it still offers me a chance to level up, to get a dopamine hit from doing simulated work, but nothing real gets accomplished in the real world. Well, when you look back at age 70 or 80, do you want all of your adventures to be virtual and fake?
No.
I mean, that's what we're looking back on. I mean, we're headed for loneliness. This is all stuff that will ultimately leave you by yourself. And furthermore, those dopamine hits are cheap
Yep.
because a real woman in a real relationship will call you out, as you know, to be a man. She will actually call you. She will argue with you. She will challenge you. She's not going to just like give you whatever you want.
Yep.
There will be challenges that you'll have to rise to. You'll have to change. You'll have to grow up. That's what a real human being will do. But this just is a hollow replacement that leaves you with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So relishing the real is about living in meat space, like with real people, with getting outside, not being a hikikomori type person who's a shut in, and having a bigger vision for life, which I try to help them develop in the other pages, but that'll help you say no to some of this stuff, and getting busy, for instance, like changing your schedule so that you can handle pornography more easily because you're just not, your schedule doesn't allow for it. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I love what you said in your book, and I thought it was very powerful. You said, fake is not benign. And I thought and then you continued down the road a little bit on the next couple pages down. You said, a man whose primary heroism, and we all want to be heroes, right? Every podcast we share a hero story of a guy who's written into us, or a wife. But a man whose primary heroism is virtual, and this is the tragic part that I think you're talking about, is not the man he could have been.
Right.
He's just not the man he could have been.
And you're right that we have that hunger for accomplishment and work. And it's wild because if you think about video games, most of the time it's simulating work. I mean, that's what we're doing. It's like it's like a sim, all sorts of games. It's like actually you're organizing things and ordering things out of chaos, or accomplishing tasks, or even building a fire and building a house if you're doing some kind of massive role-playing game. Like, well, you're simulating work, but nothing's actually getting done. No one's benefiting from the blessing of your effort. So it's just living in that space is death, I think, ultimately for us.
Well, I love what you just said. No one's being blessed by the effort. So I want to move into the second decision, because I'm going to tell you something. This second decision led me to make a decision. I'm going to tell you a story. You're going to love this. So I'm reading your book, and I'm reading this chapter. There's school shootings in back east, and there's a little preschool. My office is in a church, and there's a little school here with, like, it's not a preschool, but it's about 40 kids up till like high school. Well, I walk in, and the gal who's running the school, she's had some parents who are pulling their kids out and really frustrated with and concerned about the security of the school, right? Because it's a little church, nobody's here. I go to my office and work. And she was sharing this with me, and I remembered your chapter, and I remembered decision number 2, and I said, here's what we're going to do. You don't know me, but if you trust me, let me get some radios. Let me give you one every day. We'll have a code name that's, if there's an intruder, I'll have some equipment in my office, some safety equipment in my office, and let me be your security guy. And I'll have radios that have enough power to wherever I'm at in the town, if you call me, I'll come back. And her eyes lit up. It's changed everything, right? And I went, these gals that run the school went from people who didn't even know who I was to, here's our cell phone, here's this, let's be in contact if there's a thing that goes bad. And this was really important to me, and it was based on this decision that you had in your book. It reminded me, it inspired me. And decision 2 is to protect the weak and vulnerable. And in your book, you wrote, the people in your neighborhood, at your school, or in your workplace should be safer because you're there. Even if they don't know it, just because you're in the mix, they are better off. So you talk to us about this decision too?
Yeah, so I'm not a fighter. I don't know any mixed martial arts or anything or respect it. But I am willing to get in the fray to defend the vulnerable. And I've had to do that just by being aware of what's going on in our neighborhood.
Absolutely.
So people don't know that. If like people can walk by, I use the example, a little girl walking out here on the sidewalk and I walk past her. Well, I don't want her to talk to me because it's inappropriate in this culture. And I'm not going to say, anything to her. But whether her parents know it or not, she's safer because I'm on the street.
Yep.
I'm watching to see what happens. I've had to call things out before. And that's something that's ironic because guys are the bane of our existence when it comes to violent crime, especially younger guys. They're younger than 25. Guys in their athletic prime.
Yep.
Like we should be thankful if we see you in our neighborhood. Like, good, we have some 22-year-old guys here. Like, things are good because they're the strongest, toughest, fastest, I'm so glad. We should feel more, but instead we feel less secure because of the way that our culture works right now. Like, but what should happen though, like with good understanding what masculinity is, people should feel safer because we're here.
Well, it's interesting. Again, I'm quoting your book. You said true masculinity is rooted in our unique role as keepers of our personal gardens. And when I heard the word unique, I hear I'm trying to read between the lines here, and I believe that God has placed us as men as protectors. And if a man does not become a protector of the garden, he becomes an enemy. And if a man is not, I should say a male is not willing to step up, this is where in our culture we've seen women step up into a role that is not generally theirs to take the mantle.
Yeah, they have to do everything.
Yeah.
Right. If we're not fulfilling our role, it would feel if this idea is right, and I obviously think it is, but if it is, then we would have mass anxiety in our culture because the people who actually are supposed to bring the security aren't doing it.
Yeah.
So it becoming a threat, like you're saying, like now we're a threat in the garden. We're the enemy.
Yeah.
Like that was Satan in the garden. We've got this shadowy figure that's allowed to be in the garden because Adam didn't do anything about it.
He was passive.
So yeah, he was very passive, extremely passive. Didn't do a thing. And he's right there with Eve and lets this happen. But like if you are a threat to people, if your wife feels more insecure or your neighbors feel more insecure because of things you're doing or the way you're behaving, or the concern that you wouldn't do anything, like then you're actually the threat in the garden. You're the one that needs to be defended against. And I told my son that when he was young, and he totally got it.
That's awesome.
Like I wasn't even thinking about this book or anything at the time. He was like 9, our daughter was 6, and he was picking on her again. And I went into the back room where they were playing, or he was causing problems. And I said, Justice, you're supposed to defend your sister. That's your role. You're supposed to defend this little girl. And you're actually causing problems. Like, you're the one that has to be defended against.
Wow.
And I don't think we ever had a problem with him picking on her again, because it so resonates with the male heart, as you know.
Yes.
To actually have an assignment, to be told this is your role. Like, no one's being told what their role is. Like, as a guy, just don't do this, don't do that, don't be toxic, don't be like, well, okay, but what am I supposed to do?
What am I supposed to do?
But when you roll that out to a 9-year-old kid, a 9-year-old boy understands it. He's like, okay, that's right. I'm a protector. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to start doing that. He winds up, by the way, spoiler alert, he winds up being an intel officer in the military, like doing all sorts of awesome stuff.
And your name is Justice. Live up to your name, buddy.
Yeah, he totally has.
I thought, man, I should have named my kids like The Rock or something. Like, I had a lady in our church named her kids Boulder and Cougar. I thought, now that, I wish I would have thought of that. I wish I would have thought about that. So this is, so your book, this whole theme of protector is really woven throughout the book, this keeper of the garden motifs, if you will. But let's move on to decision 3. You said, and you talked, and I think this Japanese name that started with an H, Hikikomori, I can't say it. What's the word again?
Hikikomori.
There you go.
I may not even be saying it right.
I know, man.
I say it fast.
I know you're yeah. So this hikikomori idea, this concept, it really revolves around people without meaning or purpose. And you wrote on page 114, you said, if you feel meaningless, it might be because you're investing time and energy into meaningless things. So decision 3, and I want you to talk about this, is be ambitious about the right things. So what do you mean by that?
Right. Well, you can be ambitious about dumb stuff. We know that.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is timing, and guys mess this up a lot. Okay. So we can be ambitious about things that are ultimately meaningless, and then we feel meaningless. That's like me finally accomplishing some level of video game. Like,
yeah.
Okay, well, then I feel kind of empty. Well, it's because I've been doing empty stuff. Ultimately, it hasn't really been a blessing to people and add value to anybody's life. But one thing I talked about in that is to see life in phases. A lot of guys don't get that. So you're ambitious, thinking, I am ambitious. I want to rise to the top of this company, and I want to start this and do that. You go, okay, but you got little kids at home right now. So if your ambition means I'm going to be gone 40 weeks a year, like, you're not being ambitious about the right thing.
Correct.
If you got little kids at home, right now is little kid season. So you need to be ambitious about being a dad during this season. It doesn't last forever. This too will pass. And you don't get those years back.
Yeah.
My kids are now out of the house. I can't get those years back. I'm very thankful though that we chose like a very low income, not so busy lifestyle, just to put it mildly, where I had tons of time with the kids.
Yeah.
And we made it ends meet, thank the Lord. But now that they're out of the house, I can do lots of stuff and travel and make money and go places with my wife or whatever. But to know the season that you're in is really important. And that's asking God. You need to ask God for wisdom so that you know what matters at this point in your life, and not lose sight of that. So you can be ambitious, but be ambitious about things that are ultimately foolish, and it's going to cause a lot of pain.
Well, it's interesting. So our target audience is a guy who lives in this, we call the stress bubble of life. He's raising his children. He's trying to get it done. And, really everything that he's going to be known for when he dies is going to happen in that bubble, right? And so we're telling guys, listen, be very careful what you do there, because your time is limited. You're in a stress bubble. Things have expanded. And so, I remember, man, yeah, you're really walking on a razor's edge when you're in the bubble. And so if you're going to spend your time playing video games when you get home from work, when your wife has been with the kids all day, or worse yet, she's also has a job, right? This is a problem.
Yeah, it is. And I cannot tell, like, if I'm talking to a younger guy who's got little kids or starting a family, like, I cannot tell you strongly enough how thankful I am that I actually did make, of all the wrong decisions I made.
Yeah.
I did make the right decision on that stuff. And I'm like, now is not the time to be buying stuff that obligates you to have to work so many hours and your wife to work like, drive an 86 Corolla. It's okay. I know that it's vintage by now, but it's like, what are you, James Bond? You need an Aston Martin. You have to have a $70,000 truck. You don't.
Agreed.
You don't. You can live in a trailer. I've done it. Like, I'm okay. Like, you don't have to take fancy vacations. Hook the hose up to the trailer, spray your kids with it. But as long as they know their dad, you're making the right call.
Well, I remember,
yeah.
Well, when our kids were growing up, I was a youth pastor, and I remember we had the old blocky Suburbans, and we only could afford one car, and I was driving an oxidized blue church van to meetings, but my kids had me. Today I'm a little concerned. Today I'm a little concerned because I'm a hunter. And I have guns that were given to me or were guns that I bought at a reasonable price. I'm really concerned with these guys, these dads today that are shooting these guns. I'm like, that's a $2,500 gun with a $3,000 scope. And you're an electrician. How do you do that? It's come on, bro, make a smart decision here.
That's what that's what we're rooting for. And again, wisdom, I tell guys this, like wisdom will tell you what's important relative to something else.
Yes.
So you can go, this is important, but this is even more important. Like that's what wisdom will do. And if you don't have wisdom, you will cause pain.
Well,
So
it's
ask God for it. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
just
Sorry.
preached on the word wisdom last night, and the Greek word that Paul addresses in the pastoral epistles is sophron. It literally means to a safe mind, and the translation is to make the right decision, overriding your emotion. So at the right time, you make that right decision, and that's what you're talking about. You know,
Dude, I
it
am.
may
And
be a good
that
decision, but the timing.
deciding things is very difficult for a lot of guys, but I'm telling you, you have to, based on wisdom. And deciding means cutting things off. That's literally the root word is like scissors or incisors,
Oh,
decide. Yeah. Like it literally means cutting things off. If you're keeping all your options open, you're not making decisions. You're in trouble. You need wisdom to decide like now is not the time for the nice truck. I
that's
can have it later. Now is little kid time. Like these are decisions we have to make. When you tether yourself to one woman the rest of your life, you are cutting off all the other options. This is the woman for the rest of my life. It's deciding. Like that's the very nature of it.
That's so well, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but you said something in this ambition section that I'm going to quote you on, and I want you to explain this. I just thought it was, you make these comments and sometimes you walk away from them. I'm like, this is so good. I want to camp here. You said, and this is making the right decision in the right season or timing. I think this is what you're talking about here. You said, hey, bro. I mean, I added that part. Hey, bro, don't confuse ambition with winning. Do you remember
Right.
that little statement?
Yeah. Yeah. How to
Well, you went on and you said, I'm ambitious. I must win at my career. I must win the deal. I must win the game. I want to be a winner. That's ambition,
yeah.
right? And then you said, I highly recommend being ambitious about losing.
Yes. And so that's a little more nuanced, but one thing I try to stress with guys is to be ambitious about relationships,
Yeah.
but you can't, but there's no scoreboard for that. And there's no money for that per se. There's no like, so it's hard for us to quantify it, but it takes bravery to actually engage in relationships. We're not that good at it naturally per se. I'm not.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it anyway. It takes a lot of bravery. Sometimes it's more ambitious. Honestly, and I'm somebody who's thankfully I've really enjoyed this. I got to travel the world a lot to difficult places around the world for what I do. But honestly, it takes more ambition for me to walk across the street and have a relationship with my neighbors than it does to go on the other side of the world. I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating.
That's powerful.
Well, it's hard, but okay. So like, yes, this is hard. Be brave about this and be okay if things don't work out. Like we don't need any more needy guys.
That is
We need
true.
guys that can actually care about other people, and that can mean, that didn't work out. I take my lumps. I tried. I talked to him. It was kind of awkward. Okay, that's life, but I'm not going to stop. So you can be ambitious about faithfulness and loyalty and showing up and interacting with God, whether or not you feel like it or not. That's a kind of ambition that's very valuable.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that. Excuse me. Hold on.
I get major thunder here too. I don't know if you can hear that
Nope,
or not.
can't hear that.
Hopefully not.
So yeah, south.
Okay, good.
So it's interesting you talk about that because, I'm up every morning, read my Bible. When I mean every morning, I mean probably 6 days a week. I mean, I'm very, very consistent. And I read mostly nonfiction, but it's really interesting because when I jump into a fiction book, my wife's demeanor completely changes from fiction to nonfiction because she sees the fiction and she goes, okay, so could you be doing something that's actually beneficial?
Whoa.
Does that make sense? She'll see that and her demeanor for me will change. And she may not say a word, but I can tell she's a little bit, like, oh, well, that doesn't look like a podcast book, or that's not your Bible. That's that Navy SEAL book you're reading where he's that fiction book. But it's interesting how our wives notice that.
Yeah, our wives are big fans of us reaching our potential.
Yes.
because she married us with that in mind. Like they have a vision for us, and it's a good one. It really is. That said, as former president of the library club, I would take issue with the idea that fiction isn't productive, because I think it is. But that's a totally different discussion.
Well,
We should do that. We did a total show on that.
Well, you know what's really funny is because I read almost, like last year I read 50 books, and I think 48 of them were nonfiction. And I determined that this year I had to read fiction, more fiction. So I'm reading about 15% fiction because, one, I love to read. It gives me a love for reading. Two, I can read those really fast because they're easy to read. And three, it's a way to calm my mind and to shut it down. And so I have personally found this is really helpful to me. And so we're having the dialogue, and so she's realizing, oh, you need to do this because now she says to me, well, all you ever read is nonfiction. You need to read other things. So but she had to be educated, right? So I agree with you 100%, man. I just read the Lord of the Rings trilogy for the second time, man. Are you kidding me? Thank you.
That's what I'm talking about. Like you can't get that in a didactic book. You're gonna miss out on that fellowship and the idea, like all those ideas and the imagination. Like we need that.
Listen, if you don't think Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is didactic, you and I are going to have a wrestling match.
I don't think it's didactic. I don't think he's coming out. He would say it wasn't.
No, I know. I'm just teasing, but I mean, there's so much in there behind that. There's so much in there.
Oh no, I know, but he would resist the idea. He actually, I'm a nerd about Tolkien and Lewis, but he actually faulted Lewis for being too didactic and like his symbolism and stuff like that. That's a long.
Well, that's what I loved about
story.
That's what I loved about your writing. You mentioned Lord of the Rings. I'm like, man, I love that. That's my top 10 books.
That's awesome.
Top 10 books of all time. Now realize Lord of the Rings, is only one book. So top 10. That is the fantasy book of all fantasy books. Anyway, but let's not nerd out there. Let's move on. I want you to tell me about Bridger. The story you shared in chapter 4 as you moved into that decision. Can you tell us, because you said earlier in the podcast that you can be 9-year-old Justice, you can be a 50-year-old man. It doesn't talk, being a hero in your story, being a protector can be at any age. So tell us about Bridger. What an inspiring story.
Yeah, he gave us a master class in masculinity. He's 6 years old. But what's fascinating about that too is the way it resonated in our culture, because this went really big time viral. What happened? So he's with his little sister. She's 3, and I think they lived in Montana. And they were at a neighbor's house, and this dog got loose, and it was Rabbit or something, and it went to attack this little 3-year-old girl. And Bridger got in the way. And he told his dad later, he's like, I felt if somebody should die, it should be me.
Whoa!
Like not my sister. He actually said that at 6 years old.
Wow.
Well, he wound up with 90 stitches in his face. 90. Photos of it, I show people, like it's brutal. This little tiny boy, but as a result, like his dad put it on Instagram. My son did this. We were so scared and frightened, but proud of him. And they had clearly talked to him about what it means to be a man, and they're believers, by the way, which I thought was really interesting. But it went so viral that Robert Downey Jr. and the Captain America guy, I forget his name, Chris Evans, like sent him a Captain America shield and did a live Zoom with him to talk to him and tell him how awesome he was. And it was millions of people saw this story. I'm like, why does this resonate so much? Because that's what, like, people recognize it, even if they act like they don't understand what masculinity is, or can't even possibly understand it. Like, yeah, you do. And even if it resonates with people, because there's something so deeply right about it.
Yeah.
And heroic and like laudable. And I just found that so interesting that people reacted that way to it, because people recognize it when they see it, and they're in awe of it.
Yeah. So which comes to decision number 4, which again, there's a theme that goes throughout this book, but decision 4 is make women and children feel safe, not threatened. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, well, one thing in that, it's very similar to what I talked about the vulnerability thing, but we aren't always aware of how we make people feel unsafe.
Exactly.
So women and children in particular are, because just the way things are vulnerable. And are aware of things that maybe we're not. There was a line from another book, which I properly credited in my book, but this guy had said, he patted himself on the back. He's like, you know what? If somebody ever intruded into my house and broke in and threatened my wife, I would, take him out. I'd do whatever it took to take out that guy. Anybody who's a threat to my wife. But he said, you know what? I pat myself on the back for that, but that doesn't happen very often. What happens more often is I'm the intruder.
Oh, yes.
With my words or my lack of words or my lack of compassion for my wife, my sarcasm, little subtle put downs. Like she doesn't feel secure because so I can pat myself on the back for saying, yeah, I would do whatever to protect my wife and kids. Yeah, but are you the threat? And it can be subtle. So just becoming aware of that, like my job here is for this woman to flourish.
Yep.
I am her biggest fan. In talking about my wife, I know she's brilliant. I want her to succeed in what she does. I want her to become everything I can believe her to be.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with my kids. That's our job. So that's the thing about the cultivating part of being a keeper of the garden. Like these are vulnerable shoots and plants and flowers, and we want them to bloom. So my garden is any sphere of influence I have, and I try to use whatever I can to make sure that the vulnerable get to bloom, and then I'm not a threat to them. So I think that's big for guys to realize.
Well, you want the people around you to bloom. You want them to feel safe. You don't want to be a threat. Now, in this section, I honestly, you had a section in there, and I just said, yes, I want to go to South Florida and have coffee with this guy. I love this guy. Because you jump into an area that I've been preaching against for years. And you said, okay, by the way, guys, in making your bride feel safe or making the people in your life feel safe, stop living with your girlfriend. Basically.
Oh, totally.
Let me tell you what you wrote. Let me quote you here. You said, a woman is not a product to be consumed. If you're going to use the word love, if you tell a man that you love, if you tell a woman that you love her, remember this, at the very heart of love, real love is security. It means I choose you. I will not stop choosing you. It means I will not abandon you. It means no matter what, this kiss will always work. And you tell a story in there that I won't get into, but can you just jump on the Jim Ramos bandwagon here? And let's talk to these guys that are living with their girlfriends, Christian guys, at the same rate as non-Christian guys. What's going on here, man?
Yeah, what you're doing isn't fair. And I again, not a guilt trip, but like I had a conversation with a guy. I mentioned this in the book. Like when I'm doing radio, I had a guy call in. He's like, "I'm living with my girlfriend.
Yeah,
We've got
I remember.
a 2-year-old son." Yeah, and I'm like, "You got a 2-year-old son? You live with a girlfriend? Why aren't you married?"
Exactly.
And he's like, "Well, it's expensive. We're going to." I'm like, "Well, what? Why would you not take a vow? Like." Are you thinking I really don't want this person the rest of my life? That's really what's going on. But you're using her body anyway. He's like, no. I do want to. I am committed to her. We are going to get married eventually. Like, why not do it now? Because your body is acting out and writing checks that your soul is not cashing.
That is powerful.
So well, I think I stole that from Tim Keller, but it's like that. Like it's true. You're acting out with your body one way. But your soul, you're not going to take a vow to this person. You're becoming one flesh. I'm becoming one, but not all the way. I'm holding back on my soul. Well, that's called disintegrity. Like you're disintegrating.
Yep.
You will disintegrate because there's no integration between your body and soul. You're acting one way, but it's a lie. You're actually lying with your body. And look, there's probably one woman out there that this doesn't apply to, but the vast majority of women want a man who is willing to say, you and only you the rest of my life.
Yes.
I will defend you. I will support you. I will never be a threat to you. I will never go with anyone else like you. And I will take a vow in front of other people to say, till death. There's something so deeply romantic about that. Any woman that's like, no, I don't want a guy to do that for me. Like I doubt it. And I really think it's not more expensive to get married, by the way.
Agreed.
Like you're living in the same house. Like what's the extra expense? Like now that you're married, like what? How about take a vow in front of people and live out this deeply romantic existence where you have some poetry in life, and then you get to look back on your grandkids later on, and you get totally different kind of freedom down the line because you gave up some freedom now for a great poetic reason. It showed that woman that your soul is behind what your body's doing.
Well, I mean, and I've talked to so many people that are in this situation, Christians, and they're usually in it for two reasons. One is to test the relationship to see if it works, which when it comes to marriage, you're in trouble because you're already not committed. And number two is it's out of convenience. And I hate to tell you, but a marriage is never a convenient thing. It never will be.
Right.
And so, and
Right.
the divorce rates arguably are higher among people who cohabitate. So I don't understand the logic behind
They
this.
are.
I don't understand the
They are.
logic.
That's a no. Well, again, I think we'd like to keep our options open. We're free agents. We're consumers. That's how you operate. That's just not how you have poetry in life.
I love how you put that. And I find that in a cohabitating relationship, the women always lose.
Oh, yeah.
So
Ultimately, so again, have the guts to put your body and soul on the same page. Like, make that commitment. Your body's acting it out. That's not fair.
well, it's funny that you say that because I have you quoted here on page 160. If you're living with a woman without marrying her, you're acting out this mystical one flesh out of Genesis with your body, but not your soul.
Right.
So I think we've beat up on these guys enough. So we'll move on. I just had to take a little sidebar because I'm just so appalled that Christian guys that believe the Bible, they make it. And here's the other thing I'll say. When you take her to church with you, you're parading her around like a prostitute because everybody in the church knows you're living together outside of marriage. You're not honoring or protecting the woman that God has called you to honor and protect.
Well, and think about what love actually is. And this is important. I know Foreigner wanted to know what love is. I remember that.
Oh yeah,
That's my
baby.
point. Yeah, but like we say, "Oh, I love her." What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I love pizza. Well, I want to destroy pizza is what I want to do. I actually want to rip it apart with my teeth and just enjoy it and destroy it. I'm not out for the best for that pizza. I'm not thinking, how can I honor this pizza with my action? Like, so we use the word love.
Yep.
And it just means I enjoy the feelings she gives me. She excites me or something, but it's like love means you want the best for the other person. How in the world would this be the best for the other person?
Agreed.
That she gets a guy who's willing to give her his body, but not his soul. He will hold back his soul. How's that best for her? So it's not a guilt trip, but it is a reframing. And I hope guys can take that and go, oh, that's right. I need to change. Okay, that's called repentance. That's cool. You rethink, turn around, do the right thing. That's awesome. Much respect.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's just refreshing to dive into this with you. So let's move into decision number 5. We'll let the cohabitating guys off the hook for about 5 minutes here. You said this leading up to decision number 5. You said attention is everything. Who we become is within our control. It's not a mystery. It's predictable. Who we become is a direct result of what we pay attention to. I thought this was a cool take on things. Decision 5 is to choose today who you will become tomorrow. Do you want to embellish?
Yep. Yeah, we're all becoming something, and you can't stop it. You're going to become something, and it's based on what you're paying attention to. So I use the example of old people, like an 80-year-old guy, for instance. Some 80-year-old guys are the best. Like they're like saints. They listen. They can give you wisdom.
Yep.
They care about other people. They're not needy anymore. They're like about other people, how to be a blessing to people, how to add value. Then there's other 80-year-old guys, you can see the anger on their face, and they hit you with their shopping carts at Walmart or whatever. It's like you have this trajectory and you're going one way or the other, and you're becoming more of that. C.S. Lewis talked a lot about that. He's like, eventually you start just a little grumble when you're 25 and you don't arrest that problem, that attitude problem. And eventually you are that bitter person. That's all you are, is a grumble as you get older. So the trajectory is determined by what you pay attention to.
Well, and I love your take on the word pay attention. I love your word on your take on the word pay. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Pay attention is exactly right. You're paying to attend something with your mind. You're
Wow.
buying a ticket to something, and it's either going to be something that makes you a more mature person who is more at peace, or somebody who's more angry, more anxious, more self-absorbed. Like, we know how this works.
Mm-hmm.
And we're shaping, by what we pay attention to, we're shaping who we're becoming. If you're just gonna watch news all the time and get yourself riled up for your team, you're gonna be an angry person, because that's, you've been paying attention. And maybe it's all true. Maybe it's all like very important stuff. But if that's what you're paying attention to, that's who you're gonna be. So
I could
choose
not agree.
wisely.
I could not agree more with the news.
Exactly.
I don't watch the news because it just makes me angry.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like, what's the point?
well, it can be totally true, like valid stuff,
Yeah.
but it's still like, if I'm not paying attention to good stuff, like the Bible's really consistent on this too. Like,
Yeah.
put your mind on whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, praiseworthy. Put your mind on these things. And if you do that, if you keep bringing your mind back to what you're grateful for, you will have peace.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have peace that guards your heart. But people don't have peace in our culture. They're angry and they're anxious
Mm-hmm.
and mentally ill as a result, like seriously, profoundly ill, because they don't put their minds on what's true and right and good. So to be thankful to God and keep bringing your mind to pay attention to Him is going to affect who you become. And one way or the other, it's in that way, it's going to be a beautiful thing where you wind up being a blessing to people.
Yeah. Well, I remember years ago, I heard John Maxwell speak and said, you can pay now or you can pay later, but boy, you're going to pay. So, hey, pay attention now, man, because you're going to be paying attention at some point. So, hey, that leads me to the 6th point here, the 6th decision that we need to make. And you kind of are hitting us with a crescendo here. This is the decision of all decisions, I think. And it is, and I have a real simple theology. And I believe that if a man just surrenders his life to the God who made him and the God who knows him more than any other and the God who loves him more than any other, that man can be unleashed to become the man that God has called him to be, but he's got to ruthlessly trust. So for you, decision 6 to me was like, yes. And you just said very simply, take responsibility for your own spiritual life.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I do this, I have good news. This is not, again, it's not a guilt trip.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like, hey, you need to start doing this and that. Okay. We associate in this culture spirituality with emotion. Because we associate everything with emotion. Our emotions determine reality in this culture. But that's a problem in churches too, because what happens is a lot of guys and some women too, if you're more analytical and you're not particularly emotional and you don't have goosebump experiences at church and everybody else is, you feel like people start to think, what's the matter with me?
Yeah.
I'm not feeling this. You hear other people go, I can feel God in this place. I feel His presence, or God told me this. And like, well, I don't. Something's missing. Either God's abandoned me because I'm too gross, or I'm just not spiritual enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling guys, I have good news. Spirituality is not emotion.
Agreed.
Your feelings do not determine God's closeness to you. Your feelings do not determine whether God loves you or not. Your feelings do not determine whether He's pleased with you. You know what God's looking for? He's looking for loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
And see, as somebody who's not particularly emotional myself, and I've also been raised with a lot of Christian hypocrisy, to put it mildly, like it would scare you to hear the stuff I went through growing up. But like, I'm always questioning things. I'm like, what does that mean? I don't always feel God around.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change reality. So what God wants us to do is to keep showing up and interacting with Him and partnering with Him. So when I pray in the morning, I'm walking the dog and I'm asking God, please help me with what I need for today. Give me the resources I need, my daily bread. Give me the energy and creativity I need for my job, just writing or doing radio or whatever your job is. You need social energy for people, energy for your family. Ask God for that to get through today, and partner with Him. And whether you feel it or not, even if you feel guilty because you got caught up in something, show up again the next day. Don't let your shame chase you away. continue to partner with him. Your feelings can take a back burner, but like guys know duty and loyalty. We get that.
Yep.
But it's the emotion thing that can throw us off. So when I'm saying take responsibility, your spiritual life's going to look different. If you're married, your wife might have a totally different take. She might think you're not spiritual because you're not as excited about something or not as demonstrative. She's wrong. If she's just basing it on that, because what God's looking for is loyalty. And you may have a deep, abiding loyalty where you keep partnering with God, and now you're in the sweet spot. You ask him to make a way for you. You know he's your shepherd. You lack nothing. You're going to walk through the darkest valley and fear nothing because he's guiding you with his rod and stuff. Like, you got this relationship with him. That's what he's looking for. He's looking for partners. And we can do that. It's not about emotion. Emotions come and go, but they lie to us too.
Yep.
So if you ever feel down, last thought on this, I'm sorry, if you ever feel down, like, well, I feel depressed. Okay. David in Psalms is talking to himself, going, why are you so downcast, my soul? Put your trust in God.
Yep.
So I struggle with depression. I struggle with thinking I'm a failure. This is my life story, right?
Yeah.
But I can recognize it's not true. I can speak to it. I can say, God, I'm showing up anyway. And that's what he's looking for. So,
I'll tell you what,
yeah.
I love, so let me tell you, so I'm a highly emotive guy. So I'm Italian. Come on. So I'm an emotional guy.
That's awesome.
I'm,
Yes.
I'm emotional.
That.
I'm a feeler. I'm a feeling guy. But what I've had to do is train my mind through reading and stuff that it's about fact over feelings. And so I'm a massive, massive proponent of reading the Bible and doing what it says. So you use the word loyalty. I love the word obedience. Listen, it's not about your feelings. It's not about God, giving you the, sprinkling the fairy dust on you. It is about you walking in obedience with God and pleasing him with your life. And yes, I feel God. And yes, God speaks to me. But even if he didn't, it would not change a thing. And it's so refreshing to hear that.
Right. Yeah, I think he does speak to me, but just in different ways, through other people,
yes,
through the Bible, there's ways, but I don't have these experiences like some people have. It's all good. I respect the people who have them.
Yeah.
It's great. But he is looking for partners. His eyes are scanning the earth looking, it says in Jeremiah, but he partners with Abraham. He's looking for people to build his kingdom. And that's what we're supposed to do with our gardens. That's our kingdom. Like, take that, put it under his control, and bring his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven.
Yeah, we tell guys that they can change.
Safe.
We tell guys that they can change their world, which is the same as saying you are called to maintain your garden. That is your world. That is your garden. It's funny. God speaks to us in so many different ways. Like, I'm thinking about your book. When I went downstairs and said, I will make sure that this school has security, God spoke to me through your book. I didn't get a hoochie coochie. I didn't have warm fuzzies. I didn't weep uncontrollably.
Right.
I didn't have gold dust come out of the sky. I just was like, this is legit. I love this reminder. And when an opportunity showed up, I thought, man, the timing is a God thing. So let's just walk into it.
Yes.
It's really simple.
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
No, it's really, and I love this, man. I love that part of your book. You just said in your book, to my great relief, I've realized over time that God really wants one thing from us: loyalty. Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you what, Brant, I read a lot of books, and I do a lot of, as to get ready for these shows. And this is really, I laughed in this book a lot. I really enjoyed your writing. Your parenthetical statements are, I guess I would just say, epic. And then you have this self-deprecating humor that is really, really funny. I do think that flute could be a pretty dangerous weapon. The accordion, not so much.
Dude, do not underrate the pectoral development you can get from accordion playing, though.
I can tell, man, right now. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The squeezing is just, yeah. So
I've thought about the harmonica. I can't play the guitar. I won't ever try that again. But I thought the harmonica could be pretty cool, man, on a fireplace or on a hunting trip. So I don't know, man. If you think I've got potential, let me know.
Yeah. I do. I believe in you, man.
Oh, man, I appreciate it. Well, hey, man, I have a son who just moved for the next year down to Big Pine, one of the Florida Keys. So if I'm in your neck of the woods, I'll definitely look you up. Yeah, he's down there.
Look me up.
Yeah, he's in a marine biology camp, and So I'm like, well, maybe he's close to, maybe we fly into an airport. What's the closest airport?
Well, Palm Beach here.
Okay.
But then there's Fort Lauderdale and Miami. So I'm like probably 4 hours from that island. But the Keys, it's like 6 hours from here to Key West.
Okay.
5 drive. But the Keys, that's a long stretch.
Yeah, he's
so.
20 or 40 minutes from Key West. So he's down there pretty far, I guess.
Yeah.
So, well, that's cool, man.
We're 2 hours from Key Largo. So.
Man, I got to go down there and play the song, right?
Yes, I got the guitar. You can break out the harmonica.
Gotta go get a Jimmy Buffett song and go down to Key West. I mean, I feel a road trip coming on, dude.
You got it. We could totally do that. Where do you live now?
I'm in Oregon, about an hour south of Portland, but very much not Portland.
Yeah.
So, man, hey, it was great having you on the show. I highly recommend your book. How can our guys get a hold of your book?
Amazon's great, like anything like that. It's available all over the place. And I'm honored. People want to read it together, study, talk about it. I think it's worth talking about.
Well, and what I didn't tell the guys, and this is probably what will push them over the top to get the book, is that you have these 6 sections plus your introduction, but you have multiple chapters. I don't think you have a chapter in there over 3 or 4 pages long. They're short man chapters, baby.
Yes. Okay, so I'm writing my publisher wanted me to write Young Men We Need, like for younger guys. So I've been doing that. I've shortened the chapters so much, it's unbelievable. But it's made it tight. Like I like it. I'm like any teenage guy, I'm just like, but it makes it really like snappy.
I got a book that we're getting ready to sign a deal this week probably, but it's really funny. The book was 90,000 words. And they're like, that won't work. You got to cut it down. So then it's 65,000. Now it's 55,000. I'll tell you, the book writing today is awesome. It's just like these short books because the guys raising families now, they're like, I don't have time to read a 90,000 word book. So
That's hard though. If you wrote all those words that you have to get rid of,
it was like cutting off an arm, bro.
Yeah, exactly. I need this.
Oh yeah, but it's okay, man. So hey, just to clarify, just to confirm, guys, just to go back and review here. So decisions you need to make in your life. Number 1, forsake the fake and relish the real. Protect the weak and vulnerable. Number 3, be ambitious about the right things. Number 4, make women and children feel safe and not threatened. Number 5, choose today who you'll be tomorrow. Number 6, take responsibility for your spiritual life. Brant, man, I knew this would be a great interview. I'm super excited. I just hope we I hope we pushed record on this thing. I'm excited to have thousands and thousands of men. And we just found out the other day, although we focus on men, 50% of our following are women. So they're trying to figure out their man. So man, I appreciate you and what you're doing. I'm so glad we got connected.
Thank you. God bless you. Thanks for what you're doing too.
You too, man.
It's an honor.
Have a great day, man.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
Men, if this podcast today has helped you, please consider partnering with us with a monthly or a one-time donation. You can do that at meninthearena.org/donate. Every dollar helps. God bless you. Until next time, feel the wet sand on the arena floor. Hear the deafening roar of the crowd. Taste the sweetness of victory. Smell the stench of battle. Get in the game. Get dirty. Grind it out. And be the kind of man this world needs.